In the opulent ballroom of the Lakeside Elite Club, crystal chandeliers dangled like jewels from the heavens, scattering prisms of light across marble floors polished to a mirror sheen. The air hummed with the low murmur of elite conversations, laced with the clink of champagne flutes and the faint aroma of exotic flowers imported for the occasion. It was Sofia Elena Reyes's birthday, a milestone she should have celebrated, but the evening unfolded more like a coronation for her husband, Alex Reyes. Guests from the city's power circles, construction moguls, real estate tycoons, and political influencers swirled around him, drawn like moths to his charismatic flame. Sofia stood slightly apart, her elegant yet understated emerald gown allowing her to blend into the periphery. She sipped her champagne methodically, her keen hazel eyes inherited from her Latin mother and sharpened by her African father's wisdom, observing the scene with practiced detachment. Alex, resplendent in a bespoke navy suit that accentuated his broad shoulders, commanded the center stage. His rich and confident voice boomed as he described his latest venture. Alex said Reyes Pinnacle would be the pinnacle of urban innovation, gesturing grandly. 35 towers piercing the skyline, each a masterpiece of design and sustainability. This isn't just real estate, it's the future. The audience nodded approvingly, a chorus of murmurs rippling through. Henderson Blake, the city's planning director, clapped Alex. Remarkable, Alex, from humble beginnings to this empire. You've got the Midas touch. Alex's chest puffed with pride. It started with vision and grit. Of course, the right partners make all the difference. Sofia's grip tightened on her glass imperceptibly. Partners. If only they knew the truth. She had been the silent architect, reviewing blueprints in the dead of night while Alex slept, suggesting efficiencies that saved fortunes, even channeling her inheritance anonymously to seed his startup. But here, she was merely the wife, introduced with a casual wave. Speaking of partners, interjected Elena Vance, a vision in a scarlet gown that hugged her figure provocatively. Her red hair cascaded in waves, and her green eyes sparkled with calculated charm. I've analyzed your portfolio, Alex. The potential for global expansion is limitless. Elena stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm. We should explore those opportunities over a private dinner soon. Alex beamed. Elena's invaluable Yale MBA, fluent in 5 languages, network spanning continents. She's the genius driving our international strategy. Sofia felt the barb, the same one that had pierced her countless times. Elena basked in the praise, while Alex's gaze lingered on her just a beat too long. How exciting, Sofia said softly, her voice laced with feigned warmth. Working with such talent must be inspiring. Alex turned, as if suddenly recalling her presence. Oh, Sofia, meet the group properly. This is my wife. She dabbles in charity work to stay occupied. Dabbles. The word landed like a dismissal. Sofia's initiatives had educated thousands through literacy programs, housed hundreds of veterans, and delivered life-saving medical aid across 4 continents. Yet, reduced to mere pastimes. How charming, Elena replied, her smile not reaching her eyes. Hobbies are so therapeutic. The implications stung, but Sofia maintained her composure. As the crowd shifted toward the silent auction tables for the Children's Health Initiative, Alex was whisked away by admirers discussing deals and mergers. Sofia found solace at the bar, where Liam, the seasoned bartender with a kind face etched by years of service, poured her a double scotch without a word. Another triumphant evening for Mr. Reyes? Liam asked, his tone knowing. Sofia took a sip, the burn steadying her, in a way. Liam, after all these years, what's the most surprising truth about these gatherings? He leaned in, polishing a glass. The mightiest force is often the quietest one in the room. Everyone watches the loudmouth closing deals, but I've seen the real power brokers sitting back, biding their time. His words echoed her reality. Sofia's phone vibrated with a text from her father, Victor Reyes. Urgent meeting tomorrow, 3 p.m. Reyes Industries Executive Suite. Alone. Harrison. Her pulse quickened. Victor, the legendary tycoon who had risen from a modest immigrant background in Ethiopia to dominate American real estate, was not one for idle summons. His empire spanned states, with skyscrapers bearing his name as monuments to perseverance. Sophia glanced back at Alex, his arm casually around Elena as they examined auction items. The sight, once heartbreaking, now fueled her resolve. She finished her drink and approached. Alex, a word. He looked irritated. "Can it wait? We're mid-discussion on the Blake timeline." "Of course," she said smoothly, "but you've got an intriguing opportunity, a meeting with your original investor." Alex's interest peaked instantly. "Who?" "The angel who funded your start. They want to meet tomorrow, alone." The group fell silent, eyes on Alex. His face cycled through surprise to excitement. This could be massive funding and partnerships. Sophia nodded calmly. They were specific. "Come alone." Elena stepped forward. "I should join for support." "No," Sophia said firmly. "Alone." Alex's mind raced. "This changes everything." "Perhaps," Sophia agreed. "Wear your best suit. Impressions count, even with old allies." As she walked away, excited chatter erupted behind her. Alex spun theories about the investor's identity. Sophia smiled inwardly, collecting her coat. Tomorrow, the veil lifts. The drive home was quiet, city lights blurring past. Sophia reflected on her dual life, the heiress who had forsaken boardrooms for love, only to build in shadows. Her multicultural heritage, her mother's fiery Latin spirit from Mexico, blended with Victor's strategic Ethiopian roots, had forged her into a force of quiet power. At home, Alex arrived late, buzzing with anticipation. That meeting could skyrocket us. Sophia, unpacking her thoughts, replied, "Or reveal truths you've overlooked." He laughed it off. "Don't worry, I've got this." As he slept, Sophia stared at the ceiling. Her decision solidified. The opening words of change had been uttered. The hidden shadows were stirring. Morning light filtered into the Race Industries penthouse as Sophia ascended the private elevator. The familiar scent of orchids and polished wood evoked childhood memories, spinning in her father's chair while he orchestrated deals. Clara Chen, Victor's loyal assistant of Asian descent, greeted her. "He's ready, Miss Reyes." Victor stood at the window, his tall frame silhouetted against the skyline. His salt and pepper hair and deep brown skin spoke of battles won. At 65, he remained formidable, his presence silencing rooms. "Daughter," he said, voice warm yet steely, embracing her. "You seem burdened." "I've been invisible too long," Sophia admitted. "With charity as cover?" Victor poured bourbon. "Why hide the Harvard valedictorian, the mind behind our Southeast expansion? Love, father. I wanted us to build together, equally." "And has he?" Victor's eyes narrowed. "I know of Elena Vance. Her family outmaneuvered her father in a deal years ago, leading to their ruin. This is vengeance. Vanguard Group plans to acquire Reyes Construction and strip it." Sophia's blood chilled. "How?" Victor's wall panel revealed a digital web. Suppliers, banks, contracts, all linked to Reyes Industries. "I've safeguarded you both. Your husband's triumphs, facilitated by me." "Why now?" Sophia asked, absorbing the scope. "To reclaim you." Victor handed Elena's dossier. "She's seducing him into a trap. Join me, let's counter." Sophia's strategic mind awakened, analyzing weaknesses. "If I step in, no more hiding." "No," Victor agreed. "But that could be freedom." As she left, dossier in hand, Sophia felt empowered. The shadows were dissipating. A reckoning loomed. Unbeknownst to her, Elena watched from afar, her own shadows deepening. The game was afoot, and the birthday mockery was merely the spark. Sophia retreated to the dimly lit corner of the ballroom, her emerald gown whispering against the marble as she moved. The Lakeside Elite Club's grandeur felt suffocating now, the laughter and clinking glasses a stark contrast to the storm brewing within her. She watched Alex from afar, his hand lingering on Elena's arm a fraction too long, their heads bent close in what appeared to be an intimate conversation. Elena's laughter tinkled like crystal, drawing admiring glances from the surrounding guests. How had it come to this, Sophia wondered, her mind drifting back to the early days of their marriage. 5 years ago, Alex had been a struggling contractor with big dreams but empty pockets. She remembered their cramped apartment, where she had sold her heirloom jewelry pieces passed down from her Mexican grandmother to fund his first equipment purchase. Back then, he had looked at her with gratitude, seeking her advice on every blueprint and business plan. She had been his equal partner, even as she concealed her true identity as the daughter of Victor Reyes, the self-made billionaire whose real estate empire dominated the skyline. But success had changed him. As Reyes' construction grew, fueled by her anonymous investments and her father's subtle interventions, Alex had begun to believe his own hype. The humble man she loved faded, replaced by this version who dismissed her contributions and elevated women like Elena. Sophia's thoughts were interrupted by Liam, the bartender, who slid another scotch her way. "You could use this, Mrs. Reyes." She accepted it gratefully. "Liam, you've seen it all here. What's the real power in rooms like this?" He glanced around before leaning in. "It's not the ones shouting about deals. It's the quiet observers, the ones everyone overlooks. They've got the leverage because no one sees them coming." His words resonated deeply. Liam had been a fixture at these events for decades. Unbeknownst to most, he was an old family friend of the Reyes clan. Victor had placed him here years ago as a discreet watchdog, a role Liam played with unassuming grace. Sophia nodded, her eyes flicking back to Alex and Elena. Elena's hand rested on his shoulder, her body language screaming familiarity. Sophia's stomach twisted. She excused herself from the bar and slipped toward the terrace, needing fresh air to clear her head. The cool night breeze carried the scent of the lake, a momentary respite. But as she stepped out, she overheard voices from the shadowed alcove nearby. It was Alex and Elena. "Elena said we need to discuss this further," her voice low and sultry, away from prying eyes. "How about dinner tomorrow? Just us?" Alex hesitated only briefly. "Sounds perfect. Things have been stagnant lately. I need fresh perspectives." Sophia's heart clenched. Stagnant? Was that how he viewed their marriage? As they continued, she pressed against the wall, hidden in the shadows. "Your wife's charity work is sweet," Elena added with a chuckle. "But building an empire requires sharper minds. Someone like me." Alex didn't defend her. Instead, he laughed softly. "You're right. Sophia means well, but she's not cut out for this world." The words pierced Sophia like a dagger. She had graduated valedictorian from Harvard Business School, orchestrated multi-million-dollar expansions for Reyes Industries before stepping back for love. She spoke 4 languages fluently and had negotiated deals in boardrooms across Asia and Europe. Yet, to him, she was just the supportive wife with harmless hobbies. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them away. This was the betrayal she had feared, the slow erosion of their bond. Her multicultural heritage had taught her resilience, her mother's stories of immigrating from Mexico, facing discrimination yet thriving, and her father's rise from Ethiopian roots to American tycoon. Victor had built his empire through sheer will, teaching Sophia that true power came from within, not from accolades. She slipped back inside, her resolve hardening. No more hiding. She pulled out her phone and texted Victor. "I'm ready to come home." The reply was immediate. "Tomorrow. We'll plan." As the evening wound down, Sophia approached Alex with a practiced smile. "Ready to leave?" He nodded, still buzzing from the night's adulation. "Great event. That investor meeting tomorrow could be a game changer." "Indeed," she said cryptically. "Sleep well. You'll need it." At home, in their luxurious penthouse overlooking the city, Sophia lay awake while Alex snored beside her. Her mind raced through memories. The day she liquidated part of her trust fund to back his first project, posing as an anonymous angel investor. He ignored the nights she pored over environmental reports, suggesting changes that averted disasters, all while playing the role of the unassuming wife. But why? Her inner voice demanded. Because she had fallen for the dreamer in him, the man who promised equality. Now, that man seemed lost in ego. Morning came with a crisp autumn sun. Sophia dressed simply, in a blue blouse and slacks, maintaining her facade for one last day. She kissed Alex goodbye as he headed to the office, oblivious. "Drive safe," she said. "You too. Don't tire yourself with those charity meetings." She smiled thinly. "Oh, I won't." The elevator ride to Reyes Industries felt like ascending to her true self. Clara greeted her warmly. "Your father's eager." Victor enveloped her in a hug. "My brilliant girl. Tell me everything." Over coffee in his expansive office, Sophia poured out her frustrations. "He's changed, father. Dismissive. And Elena, she's not just a colleague." Victor's face darkened. "I suspected. Her father was my rival. I outbid him on a key property, leading to his downfall. This is personal." Sophia nodded. "I overheard them planning a private dinner. It's more than business." Victor's fists clenched. "Unacceptable. But daughter, why endure this? You're worth empires." "I thought love meant sacrifice, but it's become one-sided." Victor activated the digital display, revealing the intricate web of support. Subsidiaries supplying materials at cost, banks approving loans on his word, contracts funneled through allies, all to ensure my daughter's happiness. Sophia traced the connections, her business acumen reigniting. "You've been my safety net, and his, but no more." Victor slid over Elena's file. "Vanguard Group wants to dismantle Rhea's construction. Elena's their mole, gathering intel while seducing him." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "What's our move?" "Counter-acquisition. Expose her, protect the company, but only if you lead." The challenge hung between them. Sophia weighed it. Reclaiming her power meant no turning back. Alex would learn the truth, and their marriage might shatter. "I'll do it," she said finally, "but on my terms. No destruction, just revelation." Victor smiled proudly. "That's my daughter." As she left, dossier in hand, Sophia felt empowered. The initial betrayal had ignited her fire. Little did Alex know, the woman he dismissed was about to reshape their world. Meanwhile, at the office, Alex dialed Elena. "Tonight works. Let's make it unforgettable." Elena's voice purred. "Can't wait." Sophia, driving away, steeled herself. There is a conflict between rage and love versus self-respect, but action would resolve it. The betrayal was the catalyst. Her response would define the future. The city lights shimmered below the vast glass walls of the Reyes Industries penthouse, painting the night sky in fractured beams. Sophia Elena Reyes sat in the leather chair across from her father, Victor Reyes, the formidable mogul whose name carried weight across continents. The silence between them was thick but not hostile. It was the kind of silence from generations of unspoken truths waiting to be revealed. Victor studied his daughter with sharp eyes, eyes that had once faced boardrooms filled with men who underestimated him, eyes that now softened only when they looked upon her. He leaned forward, resting his broad hands on the desk. His skin bore the tone of the African sun, a reminder of his heritage, battles, and the sacrifices that brought him to this towering room. Sophia felt the weight of his gaze. For years she had hidden behind a mask of simplicity, pretending to be ordinary, a woman willing to sacrifice her own ambitions for love. She remembered the sleepless nights in their small apartment when she sold her diamond necklace to help Alex fund his first pitch deck. She remembered the silence she endured when he publicly dismissed her intelligence, all for the sake of peace. And now she realized, peace had been a fragile illusion. "I cannot stay quiet any longer," Sophia whispered, her voice trembling from fear and the storm rising within her. "I gave him everything, Papa, my time, my dreams, my savings, and yet to him I am invisible. Worse, I am disposable." Victor's brow furrowed. He rose and walked toward the tall windows, gazing at the city his empire had helped shape. "You remind me of your mother," he said quietly. She, too, believed that love required silence. But silence destroys. "You are not meant to be invisible, Sophia. You are my heir." Her heart thudded against her ribs. The word heir was not just a title, it was a revelation. She had tried for years to be seen as Alex's partner, not Victor's daughter. She had buried her name so that love could thrive without the weight of wealth. But now the weight was already crushing her. Victor returned to the desk and opened a black folder. Inside lay neatly arranged documents, stamped and signed with the insignia of Reyes Industries. He slid them across the table. "I should have told you sooner. Most of Alex's contracts, every investor who believed in him, and every deal he thought he won through talent were orchestrated. I made sure he succeeded because you loved him. I wanted him to believe he built something, but your sacrifice and my hand carried him forward." Sophia's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. She saw the names of subsidiaries, shell companies, and offshore trusts, all linked back to her father. It was undeniable proof that Alex's empire was not built on his foundation. Her stomach twisted with conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to weep for the betrayal. Another part wanted to rage at the lies. But the deepest part of her felt a strange calm. Finally, the truth had a voice. "Why show me this now?" she asked, lifting her eyes to him. "Because the storm is here," Victor replied. His deep voice carried both power and sorrow. The woman at Alex's side, Elena Vance, is not who she pretends to be. She works for Vanguard Group, a rival that once tried to crush me. Years ago, I refused a merger that would have stripped me of everything. In their failure, her family lost everything. She was just a girl then, but I recognize vengeance when I see it. She is using Alex, and Alex is blind. Sophia leaned back in her chair, the revelation crashing over her. She remembered the smug smile on Elena's face, the way she leaned close to Alex, whispering promises of success. It had felt personal, and now she knew why. Elena's ambition was sharpened, not just by greed, but by grief. "What do you want me to do?" Sophia asked, her tone steady though her heart pounded. Victor looked at her, his expression heavy with both pride and regret. "I want you to protect yourself. Alex will learn the truth, but he must also face the consequences of his arrogance. You have the power to end this game of shadows, but you must choose whether you want to destroy him or teach him." Sophia turned her face to the window. The skyline gleamed like shards of broken glass. Once, she had dreamed of standing beside Alex, building a future hand in hand. But dreams had turned to ashes. The child within her, Alex did not yet know existed, shifted, as if reminding her that she carried more than her own future now. "Teaching him will not be enough," she said at last. "He has already forgotten what it means to value love over power. If I confront him, he will deny it. If I walk away, he will chase after shadows. No, I must do more. I must show him what he truly built his life upon." Victor's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Good. The Ray's blood runs strong in you." Sophia rose from her chair, gathering the documents. She felt taller, stronger, as if the weight she had carried for years was finally becoming armor. She would no longer be the woman who sat in the shadows while her husband basked in the light. She would no longer allow herself to be the silent queen. She turned to her father. "I will meet him tomorrow. I will reveal who I am, what I have done, and what he has risked by siding with Elena. But he will not hear it as a wife's complaint. He will hear it as the truth from the woman who holds the keys to his future." Victor nodded, pride glimmering in his eyes. "Remember, Sophia, power is not just in wealth. Power is in presence. Make him see you." Sophia's fingers tightened around the folder. The memories of laughter, stolen kisses in cheap apartments, and whispered promises that love was enough flickered in her mind like dying embers. She did not want to extinguish them, but could not build a kingdom on ashes. The elevator doors slid open, and the city's hum again reached her ears. A storm gathered on the horizon as she stepped into the night. She felt its electricity coursing through her veins. Tomorrow she would face Alex, not as the overlooked wife he dismissed, but as the daughter of Victor Reyes, the woman who would no longer bow to silence. And when she smiled to herself, it was not with bitterness, but with certainty. Alex had no idea what was coming. Elena had no idea what game she had entered. The world was about to witness the rise of Sophia Elena Reyes, and nothing would ever be the same again. Clutching the folder to her chest, she walked into the city's shadows, ready to summon a storm that would shatter her marriage, or forge it anew. The choice would not be Alex's anymore. For the first time, the choice would be hers. The morning sun spilled across the polished marble floors of Ray's tower, casting long streaks of light that seemed to divide the world into truth and lies. Alex Reyes stood in the center of the executive conference room, his reflection fractured across the glass walls surrounding him. His heart pounded with pride and unease as he awaited the man who had summoned him. To Alex, it was supposed to be a meeting with a mysterious investor who might help stabilize the shaky ground beneath his company's future. What he did not expect was Victor Reyes. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and Victor entered with the calm authority of a king who did not need to prove his dominion. His suit was tailored to perfection, but it was not the clothing that commanded respect. His presence, the gravity, seemed to bend the air around him. Alex rose quickly, extending his hand. "Mr. Reyes, it is an honor to meet you. I have long admired your work in the real estate world. If this partnership moves forward, it would mean—" Victor raised a hand, silencing him without a word. His dark eyes studied Alex with a sharpness that made Alex feel exposed, as if every flaw and every secret were laid bare under that gaze. Victor strolled to the head of the table, resting his hands upon the smooth surface. "You think you know why you are here," Victor said at last, his voice deep and steady, "but you have no idea." Alex swallowed, his palms damp with sweat. He had faced aggressive investors, ruthless board members, and skeptical clients, but none had unnerved him like this man. Something about Victor's tone carried the weight of judgment. "I called this meeting," Victor continued, "not as a potential investor, but as a father. My daughter has endured far more than you realize. Do you understand what I am saying, Alex?" Alex frowned, confusion tightening his chest. He tried to think of who Victor could mean, but no name came to mind. "Your daughter? Forgive me, Mr. Reyes, but I do not understand." The silence stretched before Victor finally spoke again. "Her name is Sophia, your wife." The word struck Alex like a physical blow. He staggered back a step, his breath catching in his throat. He shook his head, unable to process what he had just heard. "No, that is not possible. Sophia, she never said." Victor's gaze did not waver. She never said because she chose love over legacy. She wanted to be seen for who she was, not for the fortune surrounding her. She gave you everything, Alex, and in return, you gave her shadows. Memories crashed into Alex's mind. Sophia's quiet sacrifices, the way she worked late nights, the jewelry that disappeared one piece at a time, her insistence that they could endure hardships together. He had taken her devotion as something natural, something expected, never questioning the depth of what she had given up. "You are lying," Alex said, though his voice lacked conviction. "If she were your daughter, I would have known." She would have told me. Victor opened a leather folder and slid it across the table. Inside were documents, contracts, and signed agreements, each bearing the hidden signature of a subsidiary company that tied back to Reyes Industries. Alex flipped through them, his hands shaking, his eyes widening with every page. The truth was undeniable. Every major investor who had backed him, every deal that had seemed like a stroke of luck, all had been orchestrated by the man now standing before him. Alex's knees nearly buckled. He sank into a chair, pressing his hands to his temples. "All this time, it was not me. It was never me. It was her. It was you." Victor's tone grew sharper. "Do not mistake this for charity. It was protection. Sophia believed in you. She sold her possessions to help you begin, but I ensured she would not suffer when your ambition outpaced your ability. You owe your success not to your brilliance, but to the woman you chose to belittle." Alex's chest heaved. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but the memories rose like a tidal wave against him. The way he had laughed at Sophia's charitable projects, calling them distractions. He had ignored her when she tried to warn him of risks. He looked at Elena as though she were the key to his future, when the proper key was the woman at his side. "I never meant to hurt her," Alex said hoarsely. "I was under pressure. I wanted to prove myself. My father, he abandoned us. My mother worked 2 jobs to keep us alive. I swore I would never be like him, never let my family suffer because I was weak. I thought if I could succeed and make something of myself, I could erase the shame of my past." Victor's expression softened for the briefest moment. He knew the scars left by absent fathers, the emptiness that lingered long after childhood. But sympathy did not erase accountability. "You wanted to prove yourself," Victor said, his voice heavy with judgment. "Yet in your desperation, you repeated the sins you swore to avoid. You made Sophia invisible, just as your father made your mother invisible. The words pierced Alex like knives. His throat tightened, his vision blurred with unshed tears. He wanted to scream that it was not true, that he had loved Sophia in his own way. But the truth settled in his gut like a stone. He had loved her, yes, but he had not honored her. "Where is she?" Alex demanded, rising suddenly. "I need to see her. I need to explain." Victor's gaze was unyielding. "She will decide if she wants to see you. You have taken her love for granted long enough. It will not be through words if you wish to prove that you are worthy of her. It will be through actions. And actions require sacrifice." Alex's fists clenched at his sides. "What do you want from me? Tell me what I must do." Victor leaned forward, his face etched with both power and pain. "You must face the truth. Every contract, investor, and success you claim as your own came from us. You must accept that your empire was built on lies. Only then will you have the chance to build something real. And you must win Sophia back, not as a man who hides behind ambition, but as a man who stands beside her as an equal." The weight of those words settled over Alex like chains. His chest tightened, but in that heaviness there was also clarity. He could no longer deny the truth. He had failed Sophia. He had failed himself. Victor gathered the folder and rose from the table. "Do not mistake me, Alex. I am not your enemy, but if you continue down this path, I will not hesitate to become one. Sophia deserves more than shadows. The question is whether you are capable of giving her the light." With that, Victor turned and walked toward the door. The echo of his footsteps lingered long after he had left, leaving Alex alone with the crushing weight of revelation. Alex sank back into his chair, his mind a storm of guilt, anger, and despair. He saw his mother's tired face, the strength in her eyes, even as she withered under his father's abandonment. He saw Sophia's patient smile, the way she had held him when he was at his lowest. He saw the disdain in his reflection as he dismissed her, the arrogance that had blinded him. He pressed his forehead against the cold surface of the table. For the first time in years, he felt stripped bare of pride. His empire was crumbling, and he realized that he had built it on foundations not of stone, but of sand. The door opened once more, and a voice cut through his torment. "She knows everything now," Victor's assistant Clara said, her eyes sharp but not unkind. "Sophia will confront you soon. Prepare yourself. This is not just about business anymore. This is about your soul." Alex closed his eyes, the truth burning through him like fire. Tomorrow would bring confrontation, judgment, and perhaps redemption. But tonight he sat in silence, haunted by the ghost of the man he thought he was, and the fear of the man he might become. And somewhere beyond the glass walls, the city pulsed with life, unaware that within Rhea's tower a storm was gathering that would decide the fate of a marriage, an empire, and a man teetering on the edge of ruin. The ballroom of the Lakeside Elite Club gleamed with crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors, the kind of place where power and wealth mingled in whispered conversations and sharp laughter. Guests in glittering gowns and tailored suits raised glasses of champagne as they celebrated Alex Reyes's birthday. The air was heavy with music, perfume, and the unspoken competition of status. Sophia Elena Reyes stood quietly near the edge of the room, her emerald dress flowing like liquid silk against the soft golden lights. She felt the eyes of strangers sweep over her, but not linger. To them, she was only the dutiful wife who trailed behind Alex, smiling politely, never speaking too loudly. She had grown accustomed to being underestimated, but tonight, the weight of silence pressed harder than ever. At the center of the crowd, Alex basked in admiration. His smile was bright, his laughter loud, his posture confident. But beneath the mask, Sophia could see the cracks. She had lived too long at his side not to notice how his shoulders tightened when investors approached, and his eyes darted when talk of finances arose. His empire was fragile, yet he played the part of a king. And beside him stood Elena Vance, dazzling in a crimson gown, her hand lightly brushing Alex's arm as if she belonged there. Sophia's chest burned as she watched the woman lean closer, whispering into Alex's ear. The crowd saw them and murmured, and though some disapproved, no one dared to question openly. Alex lifted his glass high and spoke of success, vision, and a future built on ambition. His words flowed smoothly, but each sentence struck Sophia like a blade. Then it happened. A guest, emboldened by wine, asked about Sophia's latest charitable project, the foundation she had built quietly to support education for underprivileged children. The man's tone was polite, even admiring. But Alex laughed. "My wife is passionate," he roared, enough for everyone to hear. "But her little foundation is more of a hobby than real work. Something to keep her occupied while the rest of us deal with serious business." The words rang through the room, followed by laughter from a few shallow guests. Sophia froze, her cheeks burning, her throat tight with humiliation. She had been dismissed with such cruel indifference, but never so publicly. She clenched her fists at her sides, willing herself not to cry, not to give the crowd the satisfaction of seeing her break. Elena's smile widened. She leaned in closer to Alex, her eyes glittering with triumph. Sophia felt as if the floor beneath her had cracked, threatening to swallow her whole. For a moment, she thought of running, escaping into the night, and leaving it all behind. But then her phone vibrated in her hand. It was a message from her father. The words were simple: "Remember who you are." Her breath steadied, her spine straightened, and a spark of defiance lit within her. She would not run. She would not let Alex's words define her. If he insisted on pushing her into the shadows, she would step into the light on her own terms. As the party continued, a waiter approached with a large box wrapped in silver paper, adorned with a ribbon of midnight blue. The tag bore only 2 words: "For Sophia." Guests turned curious as the box was placed before her. Sophia untied the ribbon slowly, her movements deliberate, aware of the eyes upon her. Inside was a glass model of Rhea's tower, intricate and gleaming, every detail carved precisely. It was a gift from her father, but more than that, it was a symbol. The empire Alex claimed was built, not by his strength, but by the silent hands that had protected him. Gasps rippled through the crowd as they realized the meaning. Whispers spread like wildfire. Alex's face darkened. He stepped toward her, his smile forced. "What is this, Sophia?" Some dramatic gesture. Sophia met his eyes for the first time that evening, and in her gaze there was no submission, only quiet strength. "A reminder," she said softly, but loud enough for those nearby, "that appearances are not always true." The crowd grew restless, sensing tension, hungering for scandal. Before Alex could respond, Maria, Sophia's closest friend, swept to her side. Maria was radiant, her Latin features framed by dark curls, her confidence unshakable. She had been Sophia's anchor through storms, and tonight, her presence was shield and sword. "You deserve better than this circus," Maria whispered fiercely. "Do not let him break you. You have always been more than his shadow." Sophia nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. But even Maria's words could not soften the sting of Alex's following action. He pulled Sophia aside, away from the crowd, his grip tight on her arm. "What do you think you are doing?" he hissed, his voice low but sharp. "Do you want to humiliate me in front of everyone? You have no idea what is at stake." Tears pricked Sophia's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She looked into his face, the man she had once adored, and saw not the husband she had sacrificed for, but a stranger consumed by ambition. Her voice trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of truth. "I am pregnant, Alex," she said. The words hung in the air between them like thunder. Alex's expression softened for a heartbeat, surprise flickering in his eyes. But then his jaw tightened, and he looked away. "This is not the time," he muttered, dismissing the revelation as if it were a minor inconvenience. "We will talk later." Sophia's heart shattered. She had hoped that this truth might awaken something in him, that the idea of their child might break through his arrogance. But instead, he pushed her further into invisibility. She stepped back, her resolve hardening. "There may not be a later, Alex." He turned, already distracted by Elena, who had approached with a calculated look of concern. Sophia watched as he allowed the other woman to take his arm, as though the moment they had shared meant nothing. The final thread binding her to him snapped. Sophia left the ballroom, her footsteps echoing against the marble, each one carrying her further from the life she had clung to for too long. She pulled her phone from her clutch and texted her father. "It is time. When she pressed send, she felt the weight of years lift from her shoulders. The storm had begun. Inside the ballroom, whispers grew louder. Guests speculated, alliances shifted, and the once unshakable image of Alex Reyes began to fracture. The glass model of Reyes Tower gleamed under the chandeliers, a silent testament to truths long buried. Outside, Sophia inhaled the cool night air. The city was vast and alive before her, filled with peril and promise. She placed her hand on her abdomen, feeling the fragile life within, and swore that her child would never grow up in the shadows as she had. Maria joined her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "What now?" she asked. Sophia's eyes burned with determination. "Now I stop being silent. Now I show him, and the world, who I really am." And as the wind swept across the glittering lake, Sophia knew there was no turning back. The limits had been broken, and the path ahead was filled with fire and freedom. The next confrontation would not be private whispers or hidden sacrifices. It would be a reckoning. The following morning dawned with a quietness that felt unnatural, as though the city itself anticipated the turmoil about to unfold. Elena woke to a silence that pressed heavily upon her chest, the kind that no luxury bedding or golden sunlight could soothe. She rose slowly, her body weighed down by a dread she could not quite name. The night before, her sister Lila had hinted at truths too unbearable to face. Victor's betrayal had been painted clearly in her mind, but now in the morning light, she wondered if the vision would dissolve into a misunderstanding. Yet deep within her heart, the certainty grew sharper. The mansion was alive with its usual routines. Maids moved swiftly through the halls, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee drifted from the kitchen. Still, Elena felt detached, like she was driving through a dream. She walked to the balcony overlooking the gardens, where the roses were in full bloom, crimson and white, their beauty mocking the chaos within her soul. She gripped the cold railing and whispered a silent prayer, though she was not sure who she prayed to anymore. Victor's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway, immaculate as always, his presence commanding yet suddenly foreign. His eyes searched hers with a practiced warmth, but Elena noticed the hesitation behind them. "You did not sleep well," he said softly, stepping closer. Elena turned away, her throat tightening. She wanted to confront him, to demand the truth, but the words stuck like thorns. Instead, she asked, "Were you working late last night?" His answer came too quickly, too rehearsed. "Yes, the negotiations with the investors kept me occupied." "You know how demanding they can be." She forced herself to nod, though her heart screamed otherwise. Lila's warning echoed in her mind. The betrayal had already taken root, and denial could no longer protect her. She excused herself, unable to bear his presence, and retreated to her private study. There she found a letter left on her desk. The handwriting was unmistakably Lila's. Trembling, Elena opened it. The words were sharp, urgent, and heavy with pain. Lila described seeing Victor on the flight to Paris with another woman, and how their intimacy left no room for misinterpretation. Lila begged her to prepare for what was coming and gather strength before the storm broke. Elena's vision blurred with tears. She pressed the letter to her chest, her body racked with silent sobs. For years, she had believed in the fortress of love she and Victor had built, but now the walls were crumbling, revealing shadows of betrayal where she had once seen light. Later that afternoon, she sought refuge in the stables. The horses had always been her sanctuary, creatures of purity untouched by deceit. She stroked the mane of her favorite mare, a gentle gray that nuzzled against her hand as though sensing her sorrow. Elena whispered secrets into the animal's ear, words she could not speak to any human. "You are the only one who will not lie to me," she murmured, her voice breaking. Lila arrived quietly, her footsteps soft against the hay-strewn floor. She carried no smile, only the weight of truth in her eyes. Elena turned to her sister, her heart both yearning for comfort and dreading the confirmation that would shatter her world. "Tell me everything," Elena whispered. And so Lila did. She described how Victor's hand lingered on the woman's arm, the shared laughter, and the closeness only lovers knew. She spoke carefully, sparing her sister none of the details, but tempering them compassionately. Elena listened, each word striking her like a blade, yet she did not flinch. She had asked for the truth, and now she bore it. When Lila finished, silence fell heavy between them. Elena's face was pale, her eyes glassy, but her spine remained straight. "Thank you," she said at last, her voice hollow yet firm. "I needed to hear it." Lila reached for her hand, but Elena pulled away gently. "I must face him alone. This is my battle." As the sun bled into the horizon that evening, Elena confronted Victor in the grand library. He was seated in one of the leather chairs with a glass of wine in hand, his posture relaxed as if nothing could disturb his empire. "Victor," she began, her voice steady despite the storm within. "I know," his brow furrowed in feigned confusion. "Know what?" "Do not insult me," Elena snapped, her control fracturing. "I know about Paris. I know about the woman." For a fleeting moment, his mask slipped. His jaw tightened, his grip on the glass faltered. But then he composed himself, offering a smooth smile. "You are mistaken, Elena. Rumors and misunderstandings can be cruel. Surely you do not believe I would dishonor you." Her laugh was bitter, sharp as shattered glass. "I believed in you once more than anyone. But now I see clearly lies dressed as love, loyalty tainted by greed. Do not stand there and deny what my sister witnessed with her own eyes." Victor set the glass down with deliberate calm. He rose slowly, stepping toward her, his shadow stretching long across the polished floor. "Elena, everything I do is for us, for the life we built. You cannot let jealousy or whispers poison your mind." "Whispers?" Elena's voice trembled, but not with weakness, with fury. "This is not jealousy, Victor. This is betrayal, and you, the man I trusted above all, are the one who planted the knife in my back." For the first time, Victor's composure cracked fully. His eyes darkened, his mouth twisted into something sharp and dangerous. "Be careful with your accusations, Elena. You know how fragile reputations can be. You would not want to destroy what we have over illusions." Elena stood tall, her fear swallowed by a rising fire. "It is already destroyed, and it was not I who shattered it." The tension between them hung thick, a silent war with no resolution. Victor turned abruptly, his steps echoing as he left the room without another word. Elena remained, her body trembling, her spirit torn but unbroken. When the door closed behind him, she collapsed into his vacated chair. Her tears flowed freely now, the strength she had wielded crumbling into grief. Yet, beneath the sorrow burned a new resolve. She would not be a passive victim of his deceit. The shadows of betrayal might have darkened her life, but she would find a way to reclaim the light. That night, Elena wrote in her journal until dawn. She chronicled every memory, every suspicion, every detail of his lies. She was building a record and a weapon, a truth that could not be silenced. For the first time in years, she felt the stirrings of independence, the whisper of a path that did not rely on Victor's empire. As the city awoke, Elena stood at her window and watched the first rays of sunlight break through the clouds. She wiped her tears, her heart raw but determined. The betrayal had carved deep wounds and awakened something fierce within her. She would endure, she would fight. And Victor Kane, no matter how powerful or untouchable he believed himself to be, would one day face the full weight of the truth. The storm inside Elena did not subside with the dawn. It clung to her through the day, wrapping around her thoughts like chains she could not shake off. She carried herself with outward grace, smiling faintly when the household staff greeted her, nodding politely when neighbors waved from their passing cars. Yet beneath her poised exterior lay a soul fractured, questioning everything she had once held sacred. The grand mansion, the endless wealth, the delicate jewels that sparkled on her wrists seemed like illusions now, reflections in a cracked mirror that distorted reality. She spent the morning walking alone through the gardens. The roses she had once adored now appeared as cruel reminders of beauty masking thorns. Her fingers brushed the petals, soft as velvet, but she pulled back quickly, as though touching them might pierce her. Each step through the winding paths felt heavier than the last, every corner of the estate whispering secrets she could no longer ignore. Inside, Victor moved about his day as though nothing had changed. His phone calls with investors filled the air with clipped, powerful tones. He entertained guests in the parlor with his signature charm, pouring expensive wine and speaking of future expansions. If his betrayal haunted him, he concealed it with the skill of a man who had mastered the art of deception. To the outside world, he was flawless. To Elena, he was a stranger, wrapped in familiar skin. Lila visited again that afternoon. Her presence brought comfort, though Elena could not bring herself to reveal the full weight of her heart. They sat together beneath the tall oak in the courtyard, the late summer heat softened by the shade of its branches. Lila's eyes searched her sister's face, reading the fatigue etched into every line. "You do not have to carry this alone," Lila said gently. Elena shook her head. "I do. It is my life, my marriage. I let myself believe in him for too long. That was my choice, and now I must face the consequences." "But he does not deserve your silence," Lila insisted. "He thrives in shadows, Elena. If you keep quiet, he wins." Her sister's words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. Elena felt a flicker of fire within her, though it quickly dimmed beneath the weight of exhaustion. "One day," she murmured, "but not yet. I need to be ready." That evening, Elena prepared herself for the dinner Victor had arranged with influential partners. She dressed in a deep emerald silk gown, perfectly styled hair, and her jewelry was chosen precisely. She knew appearances were everything in Victor's world, and tonight she would play the part of the devoted wife one last time. Yet beneath the polished exterior, her mind was already preparing for war. The dining hall glittered with candlelight and crystal. Guests laughed easily, the air filled with the clinking of glasses and the hum of polite conversation. Victor stood at the head of the table, commanding attention with his charisma. Elena watched him closely, each smile, each carefully chosen word, each gesture toward their guests. To everyone else, he was a man of honor, a visionary, a leader. To Elena, he was the architect of her suffering. She felt her body stiffen when his hand brushed hers as he refilled her glass. His touch no longer carried warmth, but burned like ice. She forced herself to smile at the guests, but her heart beat furiously. Every moment of the evening was a performance that left her drained by the time the last guest departed. Later, in the quiet of their bedroom, Victor approached her. His tone was softer now, the sharpness of business stripped away. "You were radiant tonight," he said, reaching for her hand. Elena pulled it back before he could touch her. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. She turned to face him fully, her eyes steady. "How much longer do you think you can pretend, Victor? How long before the mask slips completely?" His jaw tightened. "We have been over this. You are clinging to falsehoods." "Falsehoods?" Her laugh was bitter. "Do you think me blind? Do you think my sister would invent such things? Or is your arrogance so great that you believe I would choose your lies over her truth?" For a moment, Victor's eyes hardened, the polished surface of his charm cracking to reveal something darker. "You underestimate what is at stake. Everything we have built, everything people see when they look at us, it can vanish instantly if you choose to believe in gossip." "What we built was already hollow," Elena whispered, "and the only thing vanishing is the illusion you cling to." His silence was thick, his anger barely contained. Without another word, he turned and left the room, the door closing echoing through her chest like a final blow. Alone once more, Elena sank onto the edge of the bed. Her reflection in the mirror across the room caught her eye. She studied herself, the flawless gown, the perfectly arranged hair, the carefully applied makeup. Yet, she did not recognize the woman staring back. The mirror showed her a stranger trapped in a life she no longer wanted, a life sculpted by another's hands. The fractures in that reflection grew clearer, and she realized she could not repair them by pretending. In the days that followed, Elena began to withdraw. She stopped attending social events, claiming headaches or fatigue. She avoided Victor whenever possible, retreating to the stables or her study. The staff noticed the change, though none dared to speak of it. Whispers crept through the halls, speculation growing like weeds in the silence. One evening, she found herself staring at the journal she had begun, the pages filled with truths she had poured out in the solitude of night. She read over her own words, each entry a reminder of her resilience, of the clarity she was slowly reclaiming. It was no longer merely a record of betrayal, but was becoming a map of survival. She closed the journal and pressed it to her chest, her eyes lifting to the window where the moonlight streamed in. The fractures in her life could not be ignored, but perhaps they were not the end. They may be the beginning of something more substantial, built not on illusions, but on truth. The thought both terrified and strengthened her. She did not yet know how she would step into that future, but she knew she could no longer stand still in the ruins of the past. As the night deepened, Elena whispered a vow to herself, one the stars alone would hear. She would no longer hide in shadows or perform for appearances. The mirror was broken, but she would not remain a prisoner of its lies. She would rise from the fractures, piece by piece, until the reflection staring back at her was her own once more. And when that day came, Victor would see that the woman he thought he controlled had become the force that would bring his empire to its knees. The morning the news broke was unlike any other Alex had known. He awoke to the sound of his phone vibrating relentlessly on the nightstand, the screen flashing with messages from partners, lawyers, and journalists. At first, his mind was too clouded with sleep to register the urgency. But as he scrolled through the notifications, his heart sank. Headlines screamed betrayal, corruption, and deceit. His name was plastered across every article, tied to documents that exposed financial irregularities and hidden support from Reyes Industries. The empire he had built in pride was unraveling faster than he could comprehend. He stumbled out of bed, his mind spinning. In the bathroom mirror, his reflection seemed foreign. His once confident eyes were now bloodshot, his skin pale, his jaw tight with fear. For years, he had believed in his own invincibility, convincing himself that success was born of his relentless ambition. Now, the very foundation of that belief was crumbling. He felt the walls around him were closing in, suffocating him with the weight of his choices. Calls from investors turned quickly from concern to fury. One after another, contracts were withdrawn, meetings canceled, promises shattered. In a single day, Alex watched millions evaporate, and with them, the reputation he had so carefully curated. By noon, his office was a battlefield. Assistants rushed in with stacks of documents, lawyers argued over strategy, and his phone rang without pause. Yet amidst the chaos, he could only hear one voice in his mind, Sophia's, steady and calm, when she had said he needed to prove his worth through action, not words. By mid-afternoon, the collapse was undeniable. Reports confirmed that an independent audit had verified the trail of funds, proving that unseen strings pulled by Victor Reyes had propped up his company's rapid rise. To the world, Alex was no longer the self-made entrepreneur he claimed to be, but a man who had built his kingdom on borrowed pillars. The humiliation was unbearable. In the midst of this storm, a courier arrived with an envelope. Alex tore it open with shaking hands, only to find divorce papers inside. Sophia's signature stared back at him, her conditions clear. She sought no share of his dwindling assets, demanded no alimony, and requested only peace. The simplicity of her terms cut deeper than any demand could have. She was not punishing him with greed, she was punishing him with dignity. She wanted nothing from him, because she no longer needed him. He sank into his chair, the papers trembling in his grasp. Memories of Sophia flooded his mind. The nights she stayed up with him drafting proposals, the mornings she brewed coffee while he rehearsed pitches, the quiet way she had always believed in him, even when he did not deserve it. And he, blinded by pride, had cast her aside. The weight of regret settled heavily on his chest, pressing until he could barely breathe. That night, Alex left his office without speaking to anyone. He walked through the city streets, the neon lights blurring in his vision. He passed storefronts and restaurants where people laughed freely, unburdened by scandal or shame. He felt utterly small, stripped of his illusions for the first time in years. He ended up at a small church he had not visited since childhood. Its doors were open, and inside, the quiet was overwhelming. He sat in a pew, staring at the altar, though he had no prayers to offer. He only had questions, whispered into the silence of the empty hall. Why had he become this man? How had he allowed greed and pride to consume him? And was there any path back from the ruins he had created? As he sat there, lost in thought, he remembered his mother. He remembered her tired hands, the way she had worked endlessly to provide for him, the sacrifices she had made. She had raised him with values she hoped would guide him into a life of honesty and resilience. Yet somewhere along the way, he had lost those values, trading them for ambition. Now, in the stillness of that church, he felt her absence more sharply than ever. Days turned into weeks, and Alex's world continued to unravel. His penthouse was sold to cover debts. Cars, art, and luxuries were stripped away one by one. He moved into a modest apartment on the city's outskirts, where the walls were thin and the hum of traffic replaced the quiet elegance he had once known. The contrast was brutal, but it was also grounding. For the first time in years, he was forced to live simply, to face himself without distraction. It was during these days of obscurity that he re-encountered Elena Vance. He had gone to confront her, determined to understand how deeply she had woven herself into the destruction of his life. She met him at a quiet cafe, calm and almost sympathetic. "You blame me," Elena said softly, stirring her coffee, "but you should not. I only revealed the truth. You built your empire on lies, Alex. I did not create them for you." Her words cut sharply, though there was no malice in her tone. Alex leaned forward, his voice low. "You used me. You fed my pride, encouraged my arrogance. You knew exactly how to play me." She gave a small, sad smile. "And you let me. You wanted to be played, because it was easier than facing yourself." He hated her for being right. He hated the reflection she forced him to see. Yet in that moment, he also recognized the depth of her own pain. She had been driven by vengeance, by scars from a past tied to Victor, and she had dragged him into her war. But unlike him, she had never pretended to be something she was not. When he left the cafe, he did not feel victory, nor did he feel relief. He felt clarity. Elena had not destroyed him. He had damaged himself long before she arrived. From that day forward, Alex began to rebuild. Not his empire, but himself. He took work wherever he could, sometimes in construction, sometimes in warehouses. The labor was grueling, but it grounded him in ways his former life never had. He learned to value the weight of sweat on his skin, the muscle ache at the end of a long day. He began volunteering at a local shelter, where he served meals to children who looked at him with the same wide eyes he had once had when his mother worked double shifts. It was not easy. There were days when his old arrogance resurfaced, when he found himself snapping at coworkers or resenting the simplicity of his life. But each time, he caught himself. He remembered Sophia's voice, Victor's scorn, and Elena's brutal honesty each time. They became the voices that guided him, reminding him that redemption was not a single act, but 1,000 small choices. He would sit by the window and write in his small apartment at night. Letters to his mother. Letters to Sophia. Letters to the man he wished to become. He never sent them, but kept them as a testament to his journey. They were proof that even in collapse there was hope for renewal. The world no longer looked at Alex Reyes with admiration. He was a cautionary tale to most, a man who had fallen from great heights. But within the quiet of his new life, he found something he had never known: humility. And in that humility, he discovered the strength to rise again. Yet even as he walked this fragile path toward redemption, shadows loomed. Vanguard Group was not finished. Elena's bitterness had not been extinguished. And Sophia, though distant, remained the axis around which his heart turned. The collapse had torn everything from him but stripped him bare, leaving him with one undeniable truth. If he were ever to reclaim his soul, he would have to fight not for power, pride, or love. And this time, he would have to fight with nothing but strength. Alex woke before sunrise, the city still wrapped in silence. The soft hum of the street beyond his small apartment window felt different now, quieter, almost forgiving. He sat on the edge of his bed, hands clasped tightly, staring at the cracked surface of his old wooden desk. The divorce papers lay folded beside him, untouched for weeks. They were a reminder of everything he had lost, but a silent testament to his choice, to walk away without bitterness and accept responsibility for his downfall. For the first time in years, Alex was free of the demands of an empire he had never truly owned. He no longer woke to the ringing of urgent phone calls or the weight of investor expectations. Instead, he awoke to the sound of his own breath, steady and deliberate. There was no grandeur in his life now, no penthouse overlooking the city, no leather-bound contracts signed in boardrooms. He had traded them for something simpler but more complicated, rebuilding himself. His days began early. He worked at a small construction site on the city's edge, lifting beams, mixing cement, and carrying materials in the hot morning sun. It was exhausting work, but it grounded him in ways the boardroom never could. He began to understand the value of honest labor, the quiet dignity of building something with his hands. For the first time, he knew what it meant to work not for status or power, but for necessity. Alex found a different kind of work at the shelter where he volunteered. He served meals to children, listened to their stories, and helped repair broken toys. Among the children were many who reminded him of himself, children who lived in uncertainty, who had been told they were less than worthy. He saw in their eyes the same hunger for validation he had once sought in business deals and accolades. And in giving them his time, he began to heal. One afternoon, after handing plates to the children lined up in the shelter hall, Alex was approached by a young boy with skin as dark as midnight. His eyes were wide with curiosity, his voice small but clear. "Why do you work here if you had everything?" Alex paused, surprised by the question. He studied the boy for a moment before answering. "Because I lost everything, and I needed to find myself again." The boy nodded as if he understood, and Alex felt a strange weight lift from his chest. That conversation stayed with him. It was a reminder that redemption was not about reclaiming wealth or status, but finding meaning beyond oneself. He began to write again, letters that he never sent but kept carefully folded in a notebook. They were addressed to his mother Sophia and the man he wished to become. Each letter was a reckoning, an attempt to untangle past mistakes and understand what lay ahead. Alex found a fragile hope, a blueprint for transformation in these writings. One rainy afternoon, Alex visited his mother's grave. The cemetery was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth. He stood before the stone, his fingers brushing over her name etched in marble. "I have failed you," he whispered, "but I am trying to be better." He left a single white rose, the petals slick with rain, and turned away without looking back. He sought forgiveness and a promise to himself, to live with integrity, even if no one saw or celebrated it. Sophia was never far from his thoughts. He did not seek her out, he knew she was building her own life, separate from the ruins they had once shared. But the memory of her strength, her quiet dignity in the face of betrayal, lingered like a compass guiding him. He wondered if she had forgiven him. More than that, he asked if he could ever forgive himself. His days became a rhythm of work and reflection. He found comfort in routine, and the steady cadence of tasks gave him a sense of purpose. At the shelter, the children began to recognize him, greeting him by name. Their laughter became a balm for his wounds, their trust a quiet affirmation that he was on the right path. There were moments of weakness. Old habits of pride resurfaced in small ways, an impatient word to a coworker, a fleeting desire to reclaim the life he had lost. But each time he caught himself. He reminded himself of Sophia's words, Elena's blunt truths, and the emptiness that had once defined his existence. These reminders became the guardrails of his transformation. Victor's shadow still loomed over him. News of Ray's Industries continued circulating, and whispers of his downfall followed him wherever he went. Yet Alex no longer feared the judgments of the world. He was learning that the most critical judgment was the one he made about himself. One evening, Alex sat alone on a bench outside his apartment after a long day at the shelter. Rain had ceased, and the air was cool and fresh. He looked at the city skyline in the distance, the lights faint against the darkened sky. For the first time, he felt a quiet peace. It was not the peace of victory, but of acceptance, a recognition that his life would never be the same, and that perhaps it should not be. His phone buzzed with a message. It was from a number he did not recognize. The text was simple, "Meet me tomorrow." No signature, no explanation. Alex felt a flicker of curiosity mixed with unease. He did not reply immediately. Instead, he folded his hands in his lap and stared at the screen's glow. The next day, he went to the small cafe where the message had directed him. The place was unremarkable, on a quiet street lined with trees. Inside, a woman sat alone at a corner table, her expression unreadable. She motioned for him to join her. It was Sophia. She did not smile when he approached. Her eyes held something that was neither anger nor forgiveness, but a quiet determination. She gestured for him to sit. Alex hesitated before lowering himself into the chair opposite her. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken words and the weight of their shared past. Finally, Sophia spoke. "I have heard of what you are doing. I see you trying to change. But redemption is not a destination, it is a journey." Alex nodded slowly. "I know. I just want to prove that I can be better." She studied him for a long moment. Then she said, "It is not enough to prove it to yourself. You must live it every day." He looked at her, the memory of her strength still vivid. In that moment, Alex understood something fundamental. Redemption was not about erasing the past, but building a future that honored the lessons learned. Their conversation lingered in his thoughts long after he left the cafe. It became a turning point, a quiet moment of clarity in a chaotic life. He knew his path would not be easy. The road ahead would be filled with doubt and hardship, but he was willing to walk it, not for glory or wealth, but for the chance to become a man who could face himself without regret. And in that resolve, Alex found something he had not known in years, a fragile but enduring hope that redemption was possible. The morning came quietly, but the air in the city felt heavier than usual. Sophia woke before the light, her body tense with unease. Her hand rested on her stomach, where a faint flutter of movement reminded her of the life growing within her. The joy she had once carried in silence now mingled with fear. The memory of her last conversation with Alex lingered in her mind, the weight of unfinished words pressing against her heart. For weeks, Sophia had been aware of subtle changes in her health. There had been dizziness, sudden swelling in her ankles, and an unrelenting pressure in her temples. She had brushed them aside, attributing them to the stress of her life, the turbulence of her marriage, and the demands of her work. But last night, the discomfort had deepened into a pain that would not be ignored. By mid-morning, she called her physician, Dr. Elena Morrison, a longtime family friend. The doctor's voice was calm but urgent. She insisted that Sophia come in immediately for evaluation. Sophia's mind was torn. She wanted to remain in control, to dismiss her fears as unnecessary. But a small voice in her chest urged her to listen. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and quiet determination. Dr. Morrison greeted her with a firm but compassionate look. They spoke briefly about the pregnancy before the doctor's expression grew serious. She explained in clear terms the danger of preeclampsia, describing how the condition could threaten both mother and child if left untreated. Her words were clinical, but carried a weight that Sophia could not ignore. Sophia felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Her mind raced with scenarios, hospital rooms, medical interventions, the possibility of loss. She thought of Alex, the fragile truce they had been building, and wondered if she could face this crisis alone. Later that day, Alex received a call from Dr. Morrison. His voice was measured, but there was a tension beneath it that Sophia could sense immediately when he arrived at the clinic. He did not rush in with dramatic gestures or words of comfort. Instead, he entered quietly, his eyes fixed on her with a mix of fear and determination. Sophia did not speak at first. They sat in the small consultation room, the hum of the building around them. Alex's hand found hers, but she did not withdraw it. They sat like that for minutes, two people bound by shared uncertainty. Finally, Alex broke the silence. "I should have been here sooner. I should have been here all along." Sophia looked at him without speaking, her gaze steady. She did not need to hear apologies. She needed assurance that he would be present now and face whatever came next with her. Dr. Morrison entered then, her expression solemn. She explained the severity of Sophia's condition. Immediate hospitalization was necessary. Sophia listened quietly, absorbing every word. She knew the gravity of the moment. The life within her depended on the choices they made now. The hospital room was stark and still, where time seemed suspended. Sophia lay in bed, the sterile sheets cool against her skin. Alex sat beside her, holding her hand with a grip that spoke of both fear and resolve. They did not talk much. There was no need. Their silence was a language of its own, an unspoken understanding that the night ahead would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. As the hours passed, Sophia felt the weight of exhaustion and fear press upon her. The monitors beeped steadily, a reminder of the delicate balance between life and danger. Alex remained by her side, speaking in low tones when words came, offering quiet reassurances that he did not know how to prove. The medical team worked precisely, and their movements were efficient but gentle. Dr. Morrison explained each step, her voice steady but imbued with urgency. Sophia clung to her hand, drawing strength from her presence. When the moment of crisis came, it was sudden. The monitors began to alarm, the tone sharp and insistent. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Alex stood immediately, his hand tightening around hers. The room moved into a blur of motion. Nurses and doctors surrounded her, their voices clipped and calm as they prepared for the delivery. Sophia felt fear rise in her chest, but beneath it was a strange clarity. This culminated everything she had endured, the betrayals, the struggles, the moments of quiet strength. She thought of the child she carried, of the life they had yet to live together. Her grip on Alex's hand tightened. Through the haze of pain and urgency, she heard him whisper her name, a promise and a plea. Alex was not just there as a husband, but as a man stripped bare of pride, standing wholly exposed before the gravity of life and death. The hours that followed were a blur. Sophia lost track of time as the medical team worked with tireless focus. She felt herself drifting in and out of consciousness, her thoughts folding in on themselves. There was pain, but there was also a strange sense of surrender and acceptance that she was no longer in control. When the moment finally came, it was both sudden and overwhelming. The cries of a newborn filled the room, sharp and insistent, a sound that seemed to erase everything else. Sophia felt tears slip from her eyes, though she was too weak to lift her hand to wipe them away. Alex's face was pale, his shoulders tense, but there was a softness in his eyes she had not seen in years. The baby was placed gently in her arms, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Sophia let herself breathe. She looked at Alex, her voice barely above a whisper. "We made it." Alex's lips pressed to her forehead, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, we did." The hours that followed were quiet. The new life resting in Sophia's arms brought a peace that neither of them had expected. The hospital room felt different now, filled with a fragile sense of hope. Dr. Morrison came to check on them, her expression softer now, almost relieved. She spoke of the dangers they had faced, of the strength Sophia had shown. But Sophia barely heard her words. Her world had narrowed to the small life in her arms and the man beside her. Later, when the bustle of the hospital quieted, Alex and Sophia sat together in the dim light of the room. Their hands rested together over the blanket that covered their daughter. Neither spoke much. There was no need. Their silence was a language of shared understanding, survival, and renewal. Sophia whispered her daughter's name softly. Isabella. It felt right, a name that carried promise. Alex nodded, his eyes fixed on the small face sleeping in her mother's arms. For the first time, he said softly, "We can start again." Sophia looked at him, her gaze steady and unwavering. This time, it would not be about power, pride, or revenge. It would be about something more profound. Something neither of them could define yet, but both instinctively understood it. And as the night settled around them, the world beyond the hospital walls continued to turn. Outside, the city lights glimmered faintly in the distance, as if offering them a quiet blessing. Sophia knew they were at the threshold of something new in that fragile peace. The crisis had passed, but the journey was far from over. The morning after the storm was unlike any other Sophia had experienced. Sunlight filtered softly through the hospital blinds, casting a warm glow across the room where she lay holding her daughter. Isabella slept soundly in her arms, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. The world outside seemed distant, as though time had paused to honor this fragile moment of new beginnings. Alex sat quietly in the chair beside her bed, his head bowed, his hand resting lightly on Sophia's. There was no grand declaration, no dramatic gesture. only a quiet presence that spoke volumes. He had come through the collapse of his world and stood before her now, stripped of pride, humbled by what had happened. His eyes, tired but sincere, met hers for the first time in weeks without defense or defiance. Sophia turned her head toward him, her voice soft but steady. "How are you feeling?" Alex took a deep breath, his voice low, broken but ready. The words hung between them, carrying the weight of everything they had endured. Sophia studied him carefully, searching his expression for truth. She saw in him a man transformed, not by wealth or power, but by the loss of both. And she saw the man she once loved beneath the layers of pride and failure. Over the following days, the hospital room became a quiet sanctuary. Visitors came and went, but Sophia and Alex lived in a small bubble of shared recovery. Victor visited once, standing silently at the doorway before nodding to them and retreating. His presence was brief but meaningful, a subtle acknowledgement of what had been and what might still be. Sophia's motherly instincts grew stronger with each passing hour. She learned to read Isabella's quiet cues, soothe her when she stirred, and protect her from the noise of the world outside. Alex watched her with silent admiration. He saw in her every sacrifice she had made, every battle she had fought, not just for herself, but for the life they now held together. One afternoon, as Sophia rested, Alex spoke. "I have been thinking. It may be time to stop looking back." Sophia looked up, her eyes meeting his. "You mean we start again?" He nodded. "I want to support you, not as a husband claiming ownership, not as someone trying to prove himself, but as an equal, as a partner." Her lips curved faintly in a smile, though her eyes held a hint of hesitation. It was not easy to rebuild trust, especially after what they had been through, but his words were sincere. She could not ignore them. They began to speak of the future. Sophia shared her vision of returning to Reyes Industries part-time, not to reclaim power, but to contribute to something she cared deeply about. Alex listened, offering no objections, only quiet agreement. The shift between them was subtle but profound. They were no longer bound by past grievances, but by the fragile promise of a shared path forward. Hospital staff came and went, offering congratulations, advice, and the practical necessities of postpartum care. Sophia learned to navigate her new reality, recovering from childbirth while preparing to nurture her daughter. Alex became her quiet anchor, assisting without intrusion, offering support without expectation. One evening, as they sat together in the soft glow of the bedside lamp, Alex took Sophia's hand. "I want to show you I can change, not for me, but for you and Isabella." Sophia's gaze softened. Change is not easy, but perhaps it is possible. The days turned into weeks, and they rebuilt a fragile trust with each passing moment. Sophia healed physically and emotionally, while Alex found his path toward redemption. They did not speak of the past much, not because it was forgotten, but because they knew it had shaped who they were now. When Sophia was discharged, they returned to a small apartment Alex had arranged, modest but filled with the necessities they needed. Isabella slept in a bassinet beside their bed, her presence a constant reminder of vulnerability and hope. Victor called once more, this time with a different tone. He congratulated them and extended an offer of support for Sophia's return to Reyes Industries. Sophia accepted, but with a condition. She would contribute on her own terms, without interference. Victor agreed, though his expression suggested deeper plans yet to unfold. Sophia confided in her friend Maria about her plans. Maria, who had supported her quietly through the turmoil, smiled knowingly. "You have the strength to make this work, Sophia. But remember, equality is a journey, not a single step." Alex overheard part of the conversation. He remained silent, but thoughtful. He sat by the window that night, watching the city lights flicker below. For the first time, he felt a sense of peace. It was not the peace of victory or power, but of humility and commitment. The days that followed were a delicate balance of recovery and renewal. Sophia focused on bonding with Isabella while rebuilding her own sense of independence. Alex found work helping at a community center and volunteering at the shelter where he had begun his path of redemption. Their lives intertwined again, not out of obligation, but by choice. One morning, as Sophia prepared Isabella's bottle, Alex approached quietly. I know I cannot undo the past, but I can promise I will try every day to be better." Sophia looked up, her expression softening. "And I will hold you to that promise." Their words were simple, but they carried weight. They were vows not made in grand ceremonies, but in quiet moments of sincerity. They were the beginnings of reconciliation, fragile yet real. Victor's shadow lingered, though more distant now. Elena's threat still whispered in the background, a reminder that their peace was not absolute. Yet for Sophia and Alex, the focus was no longer on revenge or pride, but on building something new together. Alex began to understand what Sophia had known all along. Redemption was not a single act of contrition, but a daily commitment to living differently. And Sophia knew that trust was not given, but earned, step by step, moment by moment. In those quiet days after birth, with Isabella's soft breathing beside them, they began to build that trust again. It was imperfect, tentative, and fragile, but it was enough to carry them forward. As they sat together in the living room one evening, Isabella slept peacefully nearby, and Sophia spoke softly. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Alex squeezed her hand, his voice steady. Together. And in that quiet affirmation, they both felt the first true stirrings of hope. 6 months had passed since Isabella's birth, and the quiet transformation of Sophia and Alex's lives had begun to take shape. The small apartment they had once retreated to was filled with the soft sounds of domestic life. Isabella's laughter, the hum of a washing machine, and the quiet conversations between two people learning to rebuild trust. Outside, the city pulsed with the same relentless energy, but inside their home, there was a fragile stillness, a sense that something new was being carefully woven together. Sophia had returned to Reyes Industries part-time, not as an heir or a wife with a claim to power, but as a partner with her own voice. She had requested the strategic advisor role for new projects in Asia, combining her expertise with her vision for the future. Victor had agreed, though with an unspoken caveat that Sophia knew well. His interest was not just in her work, but in the strength she represented. Alex, for his part, had rebuilt himself in a quieter, steadier way. He continued volunteering at the shelter, often accompanied by Isabella, who seemed to recognize him as a constant presence in her life. He had taken on work as a project coordinator for a small community program, refusing any offer that would put him back into a position of undue power. He wanted to prove not just to Sophia but to himself that his redemption was genuine and lasting. Their home became a place of collaboration and compromise. Mornings began with Isabella in Sophia's arms, Alex preparing coffee and exchanging plans for the day. Evenings were filled with soft conversation and shared meals, a quiet testament to the bond they were forging anew. They were no longer the couple driven by pride and power, but partners united by purpose and a shared willingness to start again. Victor remained a figure in the background, his visits infrequent but pointed. He respected the distance Sophia and Alex had created, yet his presence reminded them that their story was part of something larger. He had stepped back, allowing them to build their own path, but his influence lingered in the halls of Reyes Industries and in the subtle guidance he offered Sophia. One afternoon, Victor called Sophia to his office. He spoke plainly of Elena's dismissal from the company and of the lingering threat she represented. Sophia listened carefully, her voice steady as she replied that she understood the risks. But she also made clear her own intention to act on her terms. This was her empire to build, and she would do so in her own way. Alex supported her quietly, though there were moments when his doubts surfaced. He worried about Sophia's ambitions, fearing she might be drawn back into the world that had once destroyed them both. But Sophia reassured him that equality meant respecting each other's choices and trusting the other to lead where they were strongest. They agreed to a partnership, not just in marriage, but in business. They would work together on projects where their strengths complemented one another. Sophia would lead the strategic vision, while Alex would focus on operations and community outreach. Their first project was a joint initiative to develop affordable housing in underserved areas, combining Sophia's corporate influence with Alex's hands-on experience. The announcement of their partnership was made quietly, without fanfare, yet it sent ripples through their personal lives and the wider business community. Sophia and Alex were no longer just a couple recovering from scandal and betrayal. They were a united front, building something new from the ashes of the past. At home, life settled into a rhythm. Isabella grew quickly, her laughter and curiosity filling their days. Sophia found joy in watching her daughter discover the world, while Alex found purpose in teaching her about kindness and resilience. They shared parenting responsibilities equally, reflecting the balance they cultivated in their relationship. There were challenges, of course. Business negotiations tested Sophia's resolve, and Alex faced insecurity when he questioned his place in this new life. But they met those challenges together, talking openly, making decisions as a team, and always returning to the foundation they had built through hardship, trust. One evening, Sophia returned home later than usual, carrying a folder filled with proposals. Alex was in the living room, Isabella asleep beside him. She placed the folder on the table and sank into the chair beside him. He looked up, tired but smiling. "How was your day?" "Full of possibilities," she replied. "And you?" The smile lingered on his face. "Full of hope." Their conversation drifted to Elena, whose dismissal had not erased her desire for revenge. Victor had warned them that she might re-emerge with a new plan. Sophia regarded the threat with a calm determination. If Elena returned, they would face her together. They had learned to face challenges not with pride or fury, but with unity. Victor's words echoed in Sophia's mind. The strength of an empire was not in secrecy or control, but in the trust and integrity of those who built it. Sophia began to see their partnership with Alex as a living testament to that truth. They were building not just a business, but a legacy. One afternoon, Sophia sat with Isabella in the small garden they had created on the rooftop of their building. Alex joined them, carrying 2 cups of tea. They spoke quietly about the future, of plans for Rhea's industries and their own lives. Sophia looked at Alex and said softly, "Whatever we build, it must be built on trust." He nodded, his gaze fixed on their daughter, and it will be. Their life together was no longer defined by what had been lost, but by what they were creating. They knew the road ahead would not be without trials, but they had found strength in each other. In their shared purpose, they had found a foundation strong enough to withstand anything. Then one evening, a letter arrived. It was unsigned, and its message was unsettling and straightforward. Elena was back. Sophia read the words silently, her fingers tightening around the paper. She looked at Alex, who met her gaze without fear. "Whatever comes next, we face it together," he said. Sophia nodded, "Together." And in that quiet affirmation, they both understood that this was not an ending, but the beginning of a new chapter. Their empire was no longer built on power alone, but on trust, equality, and the unwavering belief that they could face whatever came next. Sophia looked at Isabella sleeping in her arms, then at Alex and whispered, "This is our legacy." Alex smiled, holding her hand. "Yes, it is." Outside their home, the city continued to breathe and turn. Challenges still awaited them, shadows still lingered, but for Sophia and Alex, the future was theirs to build. They would face it side by side, not as kingdom rulers, but as partners in an empire born of trust and renewed hope. And somewhere in the quiet of that night, Sophia made a decision she had kept to herself. She would extend help to Elena, not as an act of weakness, but as a testament to the strength they had found in forgiveness. It was a choice that would change everything, a final act that would leave the door open to a future they could not imagine yet.